Tell me more about your judgment.
So here I'll ask a question that I think has judgment in it. Mrs. Sork, I noticed you summarized student thinking about the inferences, and you went to the board and you talked about the lesson a little bit. What do you expect students to be doing while you're at the board and going through that kind of a presentation?
I'm going to try to answer that, or that's any other task. But in the meantime, I'm thinking, you must have noticed something. You must have noticed the kids were off task, and that's why you're asking. And so I'm wondering what kids were doing when my back was turned. So just tell me what it was that you really saw. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and so what I was hoping for with that question is I noticed that, not good or bad, I just noticed that when you were going through that information that the kids were first writing on their sticky notes and then they were watching you. And so I was kind of wondering what kinds of things you wanted to have in their head while they were watching you, because you were kind of getting ready for the story. But I knew when I was trying to put that question together, I mean, I could feel it in there that it might make somebody, like, what was going on while I was writing it. I mean, exactly what you said. So what are some other questions that maybe people had about the lessons that we could ask Mrs. Silk?
And so then that, was that intended then to drive the information that you were going to present?
yeah. So obviously I had there are lots of targets in the room, but there's the one on the whiteboard is the one we're really focusing on for this lesson. And so the post-it note was meant to get at that, what they remember about inferences, because I'm going to take it to another level.
Now I know he's taping this, but that was a judgmental question. I
Or
felt
where
that
did you feel that?
because in it there was an assumption that you should have been using that to drive your instruction. I mean, I felt that as soon as I said it. It was like, okay, you did this activity. Now, how were you going to use that to change what you were going to do?
Yeah.
I felt like
Well, it might be the difference in the tone of how you said it. Like if you would have said, what were you looking for in those post-it notes? And did you get what you were looking for? Tell me about that. Which would have felt different than where yours looked like there was something much more specific that you were wanting me to hear from me.
The other was kind of review, and no, it's this one, and we're just kind of trying to get through it to get to this spot. So I kind of answered my question at the same time, but still, I was kind of curious as to why we. I think it's
how do you decide?
How do you decide when you're going to stop and
Yeah.
readdress something as opposed to moving on, I guess.
I would feel really comfortable actually with either one, because if I were the teacher, what I think she was doing here, what I would like to respond to would be, well, when I asked the whole group and got some like yes, no, my word choice for the next word was informed by that, so I could see, is this a one-time thing or is this a pattern of errors? Whereas, and this is in that review skill, whereas the 1-1-1 was that was what I was trying to hit today really hard, and so if the kid
awareness is like he just wasn't hearing the sound that the teacher was saying. Like, what do you do with that information as you start to notice that pattern? Like, what comes next for that kid? Does that feel too on the spot?
It kind of does. And I think it's because the reason I say that is because I think the teacher did notice that, and I didn't see anything, and it makes so if I were the teacher, I would be thinking, well, shoot, you know,
So I don't think what comes next for me isn't in the lesson. It's next time you break them into small groups. Do you grab the phonemic awareness kids and put them and do something special with that skill? Or do you grab your aid and have them pull them aside? So I wasn't necessarily saying like in that moment that we were watching, but like as you're planning, maybe I should say rather than next, in your future lesson planning, noticing that about the kid, how does that influence you in your future lesson planning? Or his IEP?
That to me makes me feel like I may have still done the right thing. I didn't make any mistakes.